On this episode of the Sports Opinions Podcast, I have Sonny Joe from Middays on WGNY FM 98.9 Oldies over here in the Hudson Valley. And we talk about some oldie songs and how they correlate in sports and some cool backstories and what he does and his show over on WGNY. Then we talk about COVID-19 in sports, and we kind of branch out from that. We go into the NBA and what the NBA is doing in terms of trying to keep their personnel safe and what he thinks about the season coming up. And then we talk some baseball. And again, we talk about the season. We talk about COVID. And we also talk about the Houston Astros and if they're kind of getting a pass through the COVID, along with so much more. We cover a whole bunch of stuff. It's a great show. It's lots of fun. I'm happy you're watching. Don't turn it off because you might miss something great. So without any further ado, enjoy the show. What's up, sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Opinions Podcast. I am your host, as always, Alex Cuesta, and with me today is a guy that you can find if you live over here in the Hudson Valley. I'm from Poughkeepsie, so if you live in this area, you might be flipping through the radio, and you'll find him, and you'll hear his voice, and when he starts talking, if you live in this area, I guarantee you flipped around and heard this man's voice on the radio. Sonny Joe. Joe, tell them where you work. What do you do, Sonny Joe?
Well, it's funny that you said that they'll find me. They've already found me in many cases and don't realize that. I'm with Alex. I'm with Oldies 98.9, 1220, 105.3, but it's actually WGNY FM. It depends upon where you live. If you live in Poughkeepsie, Fishkill, Wapping, Jersey, it's 98.9. And if you do live towards Middletown or Newburgh, it's 105.3 and 1220 in different places. So, again, I do the midday program. We have a lot of fun with it. We do different things because we're playing the oldies. And when I say oldies, as you probably know, a lot of oldies are not necessarily 20 years old anymore. They're very old. They're actually, we're going back into the 1960s, 1970s. Is a term called oldies, which involves 45 records. So we have a lot of fun with the 45 seller that the 45 spin on, and we actually play real 45s, and they're a lot of fun to do it. So that's what we're kind of doing with us. And I'm sure you're familiar with the format to some degree, Alex?
A little bit, yeah. And when you say middays, just so people aren't confused, what time can they find you? If they really want to go head hunting for you, what are we looking at middays-wise, from when to when?
Well, yeah, sure. I'm on at 10, and I wrap up at 3. It's kind of a few hours, but thank goodness, not unlike yourself, I don't have to talk for the full 5 hours. But it rounds out about 10 to 3, 5 hours a day through Saturday, Monday through Saturday.
So that's lots of fun. So you're hanging around music all day. You're listening to the oldies all day. But what people also might not know about you, even your fans, you're a sports fan, hence why you're on the Sports Opinions Podcast. Talk a little more about the show. Talk about yourself a little bit as well, if you want, and kind of what got you into sports fandom and what's your connection to sports if you have one already.
Well, I grew up seeing the games. I think a lot of the sports that I was privileged enough to enjoy, I had a chance to go see in person. Mm-hmm. I've seen some boxing. I've seen baseball, football, not as much as I would have liked to, but enough to get the idea of what it's like to be at a football game. So it was good. Also, where I come from, if you didn't play sports, you were out of luck. You weren't very well respected or revered on the block. So in playing sports, that's something we had a chance to do a lot of. And all the sports, really, at least most of them. The only sport I can think of not really playing are those sports that aren't American. And when I say they aren't American, they're liked in America, but aren't usually played in America. Yeah. But for the most part, all the sports we had some partake in.
Definitely. That's fun. So, like I mentioned, you're around the music all the time. You're obviously a sports fan. We always hear all the time, athletes and creators, like art creators, actors, artists, all that type of stuff, always say they kind of want to be each other. And one thing that we find is if you go to events, you hear a lot of songs all the time. If it's at baseball, you're constantly hearing different little jingles. Basketball, football, there's always, fight songs for defense, songs for offense. Are there songs that you hear at times when you're watching games, or any famous songs that you know of that when you're watching, you hear that song and you're just like, hey, I play that song all the time? And whether or not there's a story behind those songs that you might know of that we might not.
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, there's a twofold answer to that question. what they do on lots of, especially football, is they have a thing called bumper music, and that's not in the stadium. That's coming into, usually leaving, going into the commercials. You'll hear, you'll hear the music for, let's say, Fox or whoever it is. I know Fox does a lot of it, and they end up playing this bumper music that you hear. And that's interesting, too, because some of the music they use, very contemporary, very new, and not always a big hit. In some cases it is. So that's one form of music being used in sports. But I think what you're talking to are about is the music used in the stadiums. And yes, there are a lot of songs that we play on the radio show that are used in stadiums. And sometimes it's really a fun way that they use it. For instance, a great example would be Na Na Na, Hey Kiss 'Em Goodbye by Steen. And when a team, let's say it would happen, I know you're a Jets fan, at least I think you are.
We don't play it often. We get it played to us all the time when we're anywhere else.
Yeah. I was going to say my condolences. I feel sorry. I'm from New York, so I understand being a Jets fan. I'm not one, but I can't be upset with the fact that you're a Jets fan. Well, let's say, for instance, you were beating, which may happen this year. I don't know.
They just got Cam Newton. Don't say the Patriots. They just got Cam Newton.
I don't know. Well, let's just say that you were beating a team. Let's not say the Patriots, the Bills, Dolphins, 35-5.
Okay.
That song is usually played as Kiss 'Em Goodbye, Steen. Now, the interesting thing about that is it was never intended to be a sports anthem. So that's one example. The most obvious example I think everybody knows is Queen, We Will Rock You.
Yeah.
I don't think that was meant to be a sports anthem either. But there are funny ones, too, like the Kinks did a song called Tired of Waiting. And it was during a baseball game, I believe, and it was really an unnecessary replay that they went over and over and over. And they kind of, DJ was very, very funny and kind of just stuck that in, Tired of Waiting for You by the Kinks. And if you have never heard it, I suggest you Google it and check it out. So that was a kind of an interesting way to incorporate that into a baseball game. And again, a lot of the music that we do play does connect into sports.
Yep. And another one that I've always heard, and I don't know if there's any fun stories or if this one meant, I don't think it meant to be because I think it has a lot of other different meanings, but the Rolling Stones' Start Me Up is a song that you hear, and I think that's across every single sports platform, baseball, basketball, football, you hear it. When I listen to the lyrics of Start Me Up, I don't think it was meant to be for sports. Do you have anything contradictory to that? Did they write that thinking that it could be a sports anthem?
No, it wasn't meant for sports. But the great thing is watching a kickoff on, football, and especially if you're at the stadium.
Yeah.
And to hear the beginning riff of Start Me Up. Yep. That's one of the best sounds in a stadium that you could have, that song by the Rolling Stones. But no, it wasn't intended to be a sports anthem. I don't think Mick Jagger or Keith Richards had that in mind when it was written. But what a great one it is, Alex, and that's a great example of a sports anthem. I'll give you one more.
Yep.
Steve Miller Band. A lot of people don't even know this. We do a thing on our show called Sample the Samples, and it's something I came up with many years before I started here in the Hudson Valley. I started noticing that the 90s hip-hop. Are you into 90s hip-hop by any chance? I'm not sure.
I grew up listening to 90s hip-hop, so yeah.
Okay. Well, one thing that made the 90s hip-hop so good, and a lot of people don't even know this, and some do, is that it took 70s music, 70s R&B mostly, some Doobie Brothers, and it took some of the great music of the 70s. I don't think we'll ever have music as good as the 70s ever again. I can be wrong. But what the 90s did is that they took some of those excerpts and played them. They're called samples.
Yep.
The originals are the 70s music. So we do a thing called Sample the Samples. Well, there's a song by the Steve Miller Band called Jungle Love. And at the beginning, there's a laser. And I don't know if you get a chance to maybe incorporate that later on, but I'm not sure. But anyway, that laser is used, I believe it's the LA Lakers every time they score a three. I'm not sure, but I've heard it from the Lakers. I might have even heard it from the Yankees. I know when they cross the plate, they play that like alarm clock thing. But they're that little laser from the Steve Miller Band's Jungle Love right at the beginning is used so much. And that's a great example of a song connected to sports. It's almost undeniable right there. That's the big one right there. That's my summation right there. That's an amazing one where they take the Steve Miller Band. I mean, I couldn't only believe that was not the intention of Jungle Love. But as a matter of fact, Jungle Love, from what I know of, was an innuendo song at the time. Very, very, very sexual. It really had nothing to do with sports, not as far as I know.
The way it sounds, it sure as heck doesn't. But, we'd like to maybe believe it does. Us sports fans, let's just keep going with that. And it's funny you talk about the samples and people sampling that different generation, because they're going a little bit of pop culture here. I don't know if you've ever looked into maybe Kanye West, because Kanye West samples so many songs. He's been famous for sampling Otis Redding constantly. So I feel like I might have given you a suggestion for sample to sample, looking at Kanye West samples, because he is famous from pulling back from old Motown songs. So that could be.
He's
really
actually no, I am familiar with Kanye West. Kanye West is probably the next P. Diddy. He does it so well. Kanye West took a song recently, Faded, and he took a group called Hard Drive, and the riff. I remember being in the clubs, and this I'm going to date myself, but I don't mind. I'm old anyway. Deep inside, and it said that. Well, I worked at a station called WBLS in New York, and WBLS is still on the radio at 107.5. It's the Heritage R&B station. Has been in New York a long time. And when I was there, I spent a lot of years there, and it was very cool. Got a chance to do clubs live. Okay. And one of the big club records was it was Hard Drive. I believe the song was called Deep Inside. Could be wrong. Yep. But Kanye West took that song. He combined Rare Earth. We play Rare Earth here. And there was another song he took, and it's called Faded. If anybody wants to Google that, you probably know it. I believe it's called Faded. And it's a Kanye song. Kanye has an ability to hear it and play what I call great samples. And unfortunately, we don't have that many great ears and producers in this generation. I don't consider Kanye West of this immediate generation. He's a little more back, I think, the early 2000s. Is that fair?
Yeah, he did a lot of Jay-Z's albums, and Jay-Z was more early 2000s, late 90s.
Well, I remember Jay-Z in the 90s, but he was trying to get a sandwich back in those days. And nowadays, he beat up at WBLS, and nobody knew who he was. And, look at the guy. I mean, I can only say great things about – I'm a fan anyway. I'm a big fan. I'm a Justin Timberlake fan, and who would have ever thought I would have said that? In the 90s, I was doing radio, and I'm going to be totally – it's not that I don't think they were – I don't think they were cool. I just didn't love NSYNC. I didn't love them. But when I heard Justin Timberlake come out as an relatively older guy, middle 20s, him and Justin, of course, Justin Timberlake, and I'm thinking of Jay-Z together, and of course they had their shows. So I'm really familiar with that. And what I do love, getting back to the point of the 90s hip-hop and where samples do come from, 90s hip-hop has lived on samples, and hip-hop and samples really starts probably in the late 70s with the Sugar Hill Gang and the song Good Times by Chic, and how it started. From what I know, I mean, I'm not an expert on hip-hop, but I grew up in a New York City housing project. Big ups to the Nostra and Sheepshead Project. Those guys that I was hanging out with back in the day were just trying to find good music, R&B music, whether it be Temptations, OJ's, Ohio Players, and then rap to the beats. They were trying to get the lyric-free version. Yeah. So the idea of hip-hop is to sample. That was the whole intention of it. And of course, now with the 808, I think it's, what is it called? The beat machine that you could get right now. It's a beat machine. Now you don't even have to use now you don't even have to use somebody else's music. You can use the beat machine, and it's an automatic drum beat, and you can use that. We could talk about, current rap is rap because it's not hip hop. It's not. To me, this current generation doesn't do hip hop, but we can get off to a whole other topic. And if anybody can tell, right now, that's one that probably would take a long time to discuss. You're right. Yeah. About that.
And right now, me and Sonny Joe are reminiscing about, good times, about better times in music. It's unfortunate that I'm going to have to take this podcast and turn it towards the present time, which for many has not been ideal. It's not, I think we have to always look glass half full. Yes, we're going through a messy, messy time right now in our history, but there can eventually be good out of this. I know people don't see it, but there could be some good. But Joe, you are a sports fan. Have you been following, obviously I think all of us have been following COVID-19 and coronavirus and what's going on with that. Have you been kind of following what they have been doing in terms of the leagues? We seem to be ready to get sports back end of July starting. We already have NASCAR back. We already have UFC back. Boxing has come back. The other major leagues are starting to come back in the United States. EPL, Bundesliga has already done it overseas. What do you think about the current landscape of the United States bringing their big pro sports back?
Well, I think there's a couple of things going on with that. I understand that we're starving to get back to the new normal or as normal as we can be that's close to the normal we know.
Hmm.
So I understand why this is a big thing. We also know the owners of the leagues, of the teams, want to make money. We understand that. And players in many cases want to get back to work, but
Hmm.
there is risk. We know that. We're also trying to keep the risk at a minimum by having nobody in the stands. I don't know. I saw a wrestling match just the other day. I don't know if it was live or not. It was packed, probably recorded. But UFC,
Probably.
I've seen a few of those.
Yeah.
There's nobody in there except the each person's team.
UFC is crazy.
Was
UFC is
wrestling
crazy when
live
you.
or was that
I don't think
wrestling live?
wrestling has been taped, and they've been
The
doing it
tape.
out of WWE's Performance Center, and they've
Okay.
no fans. It's been the interesting thing, especially that the contact sports are back first. It's bizarre because I've been watching a lot more UFC, and
Sure.
you hear every single hit. You hear every single coach's tip that they're giving, and when you hear a knockout, it is so much different now that you can hear it clearly. Like you hear the smack. Some of them are just gruesome sounding. It's been pretty crazy.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you're there, you're definitely going to hear that. Most
Yeah.
people won't be there, but you're saying on TV, you could probably hear that too. Is
Yeah,
that what
you can
you're
hear it
saying?
clearly.
Yeah. So as you were saying, I mean, you made a point about is it I don't know if you said it was a good thing or bad thing. I mean, some of these players don't want to do it. Some of them they're going to have problems doing it. I mean, there's
Hmm.
going to be some problems in the bubble for the NBA, keeping people in, quarantine. It's almost like they're, in the service and they can't see their girlfriends or wives for a long time, but they're not in the service. They're in Orlando. So I don't know how that's going to work out with baseball being limited. I don't know if I'd win this bet. It's kind of a funny thing. I bet that there was going to be no NBA this year. And I don't know, what would you say, Alex? Did I win or lose? Obviously, it's long past June. That's when the finals would have happened. There was no NBA. But now they're getting in this NBA. I don't know what you call it. Is it this season? Of course, they're saying it was the 2020 season. I don't know if I lose or win or draw on that. So that's something that's kind of funny. I really didn't think we were
I
going to
know.
get NBA in. And now with MLB, it's going to be fun to watch. I mean, I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen with that. But of course, with the second spike coming up, and we hope it doesn't happen as much as it seems to be happening in other states now, as you know, in Texas and Florida and most of the southern states, it's really a controversial thing. Even with the shows we're doing, you're doing, how much do you talk about it? Yeah, a lot of people would say it's not controversial because we all know nobody wants the corona. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's true, but what to do about it? Some people, a lot of sports shows are ignoring it
Yeah.
totally. I mean, understand I can't stay on it all day, but it is a big piece. It's a big piece of where we're going right now with the NBA and the MLB starting back.
So I've talked about it a decent amount. I've touched on it with most of my guests, and me and my brother do a weekly show called Quest to Dose, and we've talked about it almost every single week. I see your topic, and I've heard a lot of people kind of skating by it. There's some hosts that are a little more brave and will take it on a little more brazenly because they have more security. I feel like the main issue is, and me and my brother talk about this on our show, is people are getting very afraid of the current cancel culture that is going on in sports. It's in the world right now, and it's trickling into sports where if you're a fairly large sports guy and you say the opinion that is wrong about whether or not we come back, what we need to do, there's a good chance that the mob's going to come after you. The pressure is going to be felt by your employer, and you're gone. And this isn't the first time in history we've seen that. These types of things happen all the time, but it just seems to be much bigger right now because everyone's kind of sitting at home. No one's at work. Social media is more powerful than it ever has been. So I feel like people are getting more and more careful. And if there is enough sports news to talk about, yeah, let's, cover, okay, NBA is coming back. This person also got corona. This person's not going to play. Okay, let's move on. And they're not really touching on their true opinions. Um, so it's a touchy situation. I think people are not only scared of the pandemic, they're also scared of losing their job for saying the wrong thing, tweeting the wrong thing,
Well,
posting the wrong thing. So it's insane.
that's always been radio. That's always been the situation with being an employee. You're not an
Hmm.
employer. What I love about this generation, and I know you're a little bit younger than I am, is the fact that if you're not given a TV show or a radio show, you say, you know what, I'm going to do it myself. We
Hmm.
couldn't do that. That
Yeah.
was something couldn't do. But I had employers. I had to work for people, and that it was great that I had that opportunity. I'm not denying that. I'm grateful that I had that. But within a confine, within a certain amount of things, I could only say certain things. And that's why you had a lot of those shock jocks lose their jobs, get their jobs. So there's a lot of other guys besides Howard Stern and that just didn't evolve to the top. They just didn't get to the top. They tried, but they didn't. But he became the successor and made it, and he was able to say a heck of a lot more than other people are able to say. So right now, if you use that terminology in today's world, most people that you hear on the radio right now are staying away from some of the things that are really unknowns. I mean, we really don't know where this COVID-19 is going. Yeah. But if I have to do a 5-hour sports show, I really don't want to talk about it all the time. And I have to talk about what's in front of my face, like who's being traded to what. As you said, Cam Newton going to the Patriots. I mean, that's part of the stuff that we know is real. It's happening, and we're going to talk about that, and we're not going to bring in the virus. And that's what you're hearing. You're exactly right, Alex.
And I think a guy on New York sports radio, he gets a lot of flack. Mike Francesa, if you're looking for the pulse of what the sports fans want to talk about in New York area, you listen to Mike, because Mike's style has always been just rapid fire calls. And there's times where he will say, I only want to talk about this topic. But for the most part, he's pretty open to whatever topic of the day it is that day, or maybe that big topic of the week. He's pretty open to answering. So if you want to, so I think other shows in the area will be smart, because if Mike is getting call after call after call after call about COVID-19, then maybe you should talk about it a little more, because that's what the fans want to hear. But I think a lot of sports fans are pretty simplistic in, if I'm listening to the New York sports media, I want to hear about New York sports. Give me an update on certain things, but I want to hear about today's Bobby Bonilla Day. It's July 1st that we're recording this. Today's Bobby Bonilla Day, where Bobby Bonilla makes 5.1 or whatever it is. I think it's like $5.1 million or something like that. They pay him a good chunk of change, the Mets, every year until 2035. It's a nice, fun joke in New York. But these are the type of things that they want to hear about. So I think people in the sports spectrum are kind of getting tired of hearing about Corona in a way besides just an update. I think they want to get back to sports, and they want to get back to hearing about sports. So speaking of getting back to it real quick, do you think the leagues are doing enough? NBA is putting them in a bubble. They are trying to do this in one centralized area. Teams aren't traveling. Families are allowed to be there, which is nice for the NBA. They're doing no fans. They are testing. What more could the NBA do, if there is more that they could do to try and keep them protected? They're allowing players to opt out and not play if they don't feel safe. And we're going to touch on that a little more, but let's go right into the NBA. What do you think they're doing? Can they be doing more? Like I said, this goes into the opinion side, but do you think they could be doing more to protect their players?
That's a great question. And every time somebody says that, the problem is they don't have the great answer. And I don't really. I think they are doing what they can do. Like we said a little earlier, is the fact that they're going to put them in this bubble. And can you really expect these players to adhere by that, especially the single players? And of course, you can only imagine basketball players. Well, and not even going that far. I mean, you could even say, okay, let's just say, they have a girlfriend, or they have a girlfriend in town, whatever it would be. Yeah. They're going to do that. And when you hear these players are testing positive for COVID, and that's what's concerning me. I'm hearing that where, these are happening. This stuff's going on right now. So when you're hearing that they're testing positive, it's a questionable thing. What else can they do? I mean, a lot of players want to opt out, and there are a lot of fans that think they shouldn't opt out. And then you think about it, well, listen, maybe the player isn't going to catch a deadly disease, or maybe they're not going to catch the worst part of the COVID, but they could spread that to somebody else. Yep. So it's a tough thing to talk about. It really is, because I have no answers to that. Are they doing the best? I mean, I have an opinion about the NBA, and I know we want to see this, and I am an NBA fan. I think we could get more into our local, because this is the Hudson Valley, and I know you have listeners all over the country, if not more than that, but it's a lot different regionally. I mean, when you're in the West Coast and you've got two great teams in Los Angeles right now, it's fun to be at a Laker game and a Clipper game. Yeah, it's fun. Yep. But when you're a New York Knicks fan who has absolutely, let's put it this way, you have an idea, but you don't care. And I'm speaking to a lot of Knicks fans. I don't understand how you can show up. I get it. You're in Manhattan. You have the extra money. but you're going to go see the blue and orange, and you're going to just go to a game. You might as well go to a YMCA. I mean, you really might as well, because I'll tell you what it is. For me, if I own anything, a store, and I don't bring a good product, you're not coming to my store. The Knicks should have been good a long time ago. I was in New York in the 90s when the Knicks were good. Mm-hmm. There was Jordan and there was Olajuwon, but they were a good team. Oakley and Anthony Mason and the other guys.
Ewing and Houston and
of course.
And,
so there was a good product on the court. I'm going to give you that. Mm-hmm. But when you start putting this product on again and again and again and again, it's a tough thing. So being a fan in the New York area, and then you take the Nets, they're coming around now. It's, are they going to play? Is it Dinwiddie that just got a?
I don't know if Dinwiddie's going to play. I'm a Nets fan, so DeAndre Jordan's not going because he just tested positive. Dinwiddie tested positive, but he seems like he still wants to go. He seems like he's going to do his 14 days and he's going to head down there.
Oh, after 14 days. I don't know about that. See, it's like after 14 days, we really know at that point that you can't spread it. I guess that's what they're saying, right?
That's what they've been, that's what they've been saying. And that's been one possibly consistent thing since we've heard about this in China in late December, early January, when they were trying to cover it up. We've known that there is an incubation period, and 14 days definitely, like, it's gone from 10 to 7 to 14, but 14's been the number that's been consistent. So I think we're in firm belief that 2 weeks, you're pretty damn good as long as you don't
catch it.
Yeah,
you don't get you don't get a full blown case of corona. If you don't get it in 14 days, you're good.
Yeah.
Right? Well, the Nets, again, maybe taking that shot right now. Definitely taking that shot at the big thing going on, and I'm excited for the Nets. I'm not really leaning in one direction, but just being a suffering Knicks fan like I have been. I'm not extraordinarily excited, so I do apologize for our Midwestern and our Western, our Western viewers. It's very hard to be excited for a team that you're really not, your heart's not in. I can be excited for the players like LeBron James and some of the people on the Clippers, but I'm not excited for the team. I mean, I was at a bar last year or 2 years ago, and this one particular person was a big Golden State Warriors fan. And let me ask you something. When they're bad, are you still rooting for them? I don't know. I like the Warriors personally because I grew up in the neighborhood of Chris Mullin. And some people liking me back in the day, looking a little bit like him. So it was kind of interesting. So, there was a lot of fun with that. Of course, Chris never won the title for the Golden State Warriors. But really, that's just a thing that I know who they are, and that's okay. And here we go again with the Lakers. That's okay. I like the Celtics when I was younger, but it's hard to like a Boston team now. I know they went 86 years with no championship, and I have my jokes about my friends. I was in Boston for not Boston, but I was in the New England area for many years, and I always, being the Yankee fan, I am the big joke I have with them, and now it's probably moot because they can joke with me, is, name a year. And it'll be like, what do you mean? I say, name 1946, 1952, 1961. I guarantee you one thing. The Red Sox didn't win the World Series that year. We know that. Okay. But you name any of those years, it's a very strong possibility the Yankees did win. Okay. So it was really bad. If you're from the New England area now, don't hate me. I'm going to tell you something. You got it made. It's great. It's unbelievable. And I got to say, putting on a good football team every single year. And, of course, they're always chastised. They just got fined again. What are they fined again just for? What did they do wrong this time? The Patriots.
They cheated again. They were filming. Yeah. But of all things, they're filming a Browns-Bengals game. Like, why are you filming the Browns and Bengals?
Because they're doing other teams too, and they caught them doing the Bengals. That's probably why. But it doesn't take away. I won't take it away from the fact that they've put a good product on the field. That's
they're always so good. Yeah.
But you got to – the thing is, I think with Bill, he's a genius. You got geniuses. Unfortunately, you're very, very wise in certain areas. In other areas, I'm not going to use any bad words, but you're not always that wise. And I think Bill just doesn't care. I think it's that point. It's like, look, I don't think because they cheated, I don't think because they cheated, they won games. I think they cheated, so it's really it does put a damper on it, obviously. But that's a great team to have. If that was the New York Giants, I know the Giants fan is probably the least fan. I hate the Patriots. I mean, I love them. I don't really, but I like the fact that the Giants got 2 more Super Bowls. But the point being, The Giants, look at the last few years, and I love Eli too. I mean, I do because I'm a Giants fan. Terrible, terrible record, hard to watch. Patriots fans don't have to say that.
No.
Celtics are a legendary team. That's a true dynasty right there. And the Red Sox, they've come back. I mean, it was a terrible 86 years. What, they have 4 World Series since then?
And there's always the Bruins. The Bruins have been on a roll lately. That is a team, a hockey team that has just been the Boston. Here's the thing: the Boston area needs another 80+ year drought. In general, we don't. Boston fans, I'm tired. They're the most spoiled fans in the history of sports
the young
right now.
Ones. The young ones. Listen, the older ones, no. I think
the older ones, they just got their championship. The Bruins got a few. The Sox got them. The Patriots have enough. I'm tired of the Patriots. And, who else? Oh, the Celtics. The Celtics just had a few. No, go away. Boston, go somewhere. Just stop it for a little while. Give us like a reprieve.
I don't know if you remember, but, the Patriots are probably the team that had to suffer being the most irrelevant team before this.
Long time.
Drew Bledsoe came up.
Yeah,
they were the most irrelevant.
Bledsoe and Parcells made that team.
I'll take you back to a very bad year for the Patriots. It was 1990 or 91, where a guy in the locker room exposed himself, and I won't even say allegedly, as far as I know he did, to a reporter. A female reporter, maybe she went in there without supposing to be in there. I don't know that. Mm-hmm. But he did that, and I believe that team got fined. There was a whole bunch of stuff, and they weren't winning games. I mean, they did go to the Super Bowl against the Bears and got crushed. They did. I don't know how they made it there. Grogan, I believe, was the quarterback, I think. But the thing there is they were a very irrelevant team. The irrelevant teams were in the NFC. Let's face it; those were the most. And the Buffalo Bills don't get credited enough to go 4 times and not win any of them.
They're one of the Buffalo Bills.
Beat the Giants.
They're one of the worst dynasties of all time. They are a dynasty, but they're one of the worst dynasties of all time.
I'm not an athlete. Well, I played some sports, but I'm not an athlete. But I have to say this: if you can get to the big game, and this is interesting about football, you get to the big game at all, and you get there 4 times and you lose. Yes, you're a big choker. Yeah. But you got there. And it's funny, in football, not in college basketball, but in football, if you don't win it all, you're irrelevant.
Which is crazy.
College basketball, you make the Final Four. You made the Final Four. So, I kind of agree with what you're saying, Alex, but at the same rate, I'll give the Bills more credit than maybe you will. And I'm going to give the Patriots a lot less credit prior to Drew Bledsoe and understand that Boston is now a great sports town. It wasn't always like that. It just wasn't. Again, you had a lot of the Dallas Cowboys, the Redskins, the Giants, and the San Francisco 49ers. These ring a bell. These were the franchises. Some still are. The Giants have to come back. I mean, now the Eagles. The Eagles are another one that just couldn't win anything.
The Giants don't have to come back. I'm a Jets fan. The Giants can stay where they are.
The Giants fan, if I'm correct, and I am one, it's kind of a. How do I say, Dr. Jet? You don't know who to be. You don't know whether to pump your fist or just put a brown bag over your head. You just don't know. You don't want to put a brown bag. Look, 4 Super Bowls. Okay, what are the highest is 6?
Yes, I think the Patriots have 7.
6, 1 Jets. 1.
Hey,
interesting point though.
The most important one in the history of the sport of football is the Jets.
What's really, forget about the Jets, just put an M in front of the X. And I like the Mets. I'm a Yankees fan. And this is what's so interesting. I really think the Mets should have won more because the Marlins won 2. The Marlins won 2.
All right, but Joe, you and I know I wasn't around for the 80s, but my dad always told me. My dad wasn't a huge sports fan, but he said in the 80s, the Mets were famous for getting rookies, playing them out, finding out they're great, and then trading them. That was their MO. They didn't want to pay the guys, and it seems to be still the big Mets issue. They didn't want to pay the guys past their first contracts. And they would sit there and send all this talent around the league, and the talent would go win. So the Mets, for some reason, they do it to themselves. I want to jump us back real quick to the NBA because we're going to get to baseball.
Okay.
I just want to get your opinion on the format that's coming up that's starting July 31st for this shortened season. They're going to play so far. So it's only 22 teams that are playing, not the full 30. 8 teams are staying home because they're out of playoff contention completely. So out of the 22 teams, they're going to play 8 games to basically figure out seeding. And the top 8 teams, you're trying to fight to still get in that top 8. It's still only going to be 16 teams that make the playoffs. But the first 8 games are going to be for seeding, and then they're going to do the playoffs normally. There could be some excitement if the 9th place team is within 4 games of the 8th place team. Then they play like a best of 3 first wild card round, which is brand new. How do you feel about that format? Do you think they're going to be rusty. The first 8 games probably are not going to be fun to watch, but they're probably going to be good by the playoffs. So what do you think about that format? Do you think it's kind of cool that they're doing something different with the shortened season to kind of spice it up?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think it's an interesting way to go about it and get that going on. You're, of course, referring to the NBA, right?
Yep, the NBA basketball, yep.
Yeah. Are there plans they're going to play some other games beside it? It's just for seeding and then the playoffs? Is that where they're going first?
Yeah, they're doing 8 games to kind of like seed it out. The bottom tier teams are going to try and break in and kind of mix each other up. My Nets are sitting there, I think, in 7th. But I think we're okay, especially looking at the 8 teams we have to play. We should win enough, even with a kind of hobbled squad, because Kyrie's not playing, Durant's not playing, now Jordan's not going. So it's kind of going to be a hobbled squad, but I think my Nets should be okay. But it's going to be an interesting type of thing. So are you going to watch? Are you going to sit there and try and watch some of this season that's coming up?
Well, again, I like the Nets too. I'm from Brooklyn, really. I claim Brooklyn. I may be born somewhere else, but raised in Brooklyn, and it's really hard. I feel like Spike Lee. Not as much so, because Spike is still, he said, I'm happy for, his quote was, I want to misspeak, yes, if I was raised in Brooklyn with the Nets, I'd probably be a Nets fan, but got to go with the Knicks. I'm not that far. I'm going to stick with the Knicks, but I'm going to still root for the Nets. And I think that anything the Nets can do, if the Nets can do something, I'll be really happy. I've really lost a lot of passion. And again, the great thing about being on your show, and I thank you so much for having me, is being on a national stage, which this is. It really is. I've done regional radio all my life. I've been on very few national platforms at all. Is that you're talking to the country, of course, more than the country, but let's speak about America. Yeah. It really, to me, is regionalized. We know baseball is a very regional sport, but to me, it's gone west. If you're a fan of the Milwaukee Bucks, okay, the Toronto Raptors, okay, but I'm really not that big in maybe it's not fair for me to answer, but I will say I think that they're not trying to get in and get it done and get it. That's not the goal. The goal is to get in and get as many games as they can, because these owners want to play the games. Yeah. There's revenue here. This is about money. This is all about money. I believe it's about money. And yes, are fans going to be entertained? I guess your question is well taken. I mean, I don't know. I think there are going to be a lot of fans that are going to want to see these bottom feeder teams play for no real reason. I mean, we know they're not playing for any specific reason. We know that certain teams, like you mentioned, your Nets.
The Nets aren't going to win a championship.
I'd like to see the Nets do something. I don't think you're going to be surprised when the Nets don't make the finals.
No.
Okay. So, it's that way. So, I mean, that's kind of where I feel. I feel there's a lot of unnecessary ball play. It's going to happen in the NBA this year. The question is, isn't it better than watching these binging out on some of these series? And I don't know some of the series, but some of it I don't care to know either. So maybe it's a better idea. I'll be watching some UFC fights probably instead. But that's what's going on. I mean, really, it's not important that some of these teams play, if that's your question. No.
Yeah. I know, I'm going to be watching the Nets because I'm Nets faithful. So I will be watching my Nets play. And once the playoffs come, I'm kind of a junkie for playoffs, and especially since hockey's going to be doing playoffs too. I like hockey. I don't follow hockey super close, but when the Stanley Cup comes on, I'll kind of turn on any game. With Stanley Cup hockey playoffs are that good. But we're going to jump into baseball. We mentioned baseball a little bit. You're a Yankees fan, and that means I can like you because the Knicks stuff and the Giants stuff are okay. But Yankees, I can like you for Yankees. You've redeemed yourself. But with baseball, we talked about the playoffs and the season for the NBA, but baseball's taking it a little bit differently. We're used to 182 games in baseball, or 162. It's 162 games in baseball. It's a lot of games. They agreed on only a 60-game season, and then they're going to go into the playoff format. We've seen shortened seasons from baseball before, but man, 60 games for a seasoned baseball fan is going to feel like a high school season. Is 60 games kind of too short for baseball for anyone to kind of figure out what anybody is really? Or is it going to be a kind of a breath of fresh air? Like, we don't have to sit there through 60 boring middle games in the middle of a season. Like, what side are you on? Is it going to be more watchable because every game counts more, or less watchable because we're so used to the long games?
It's not a typical baseball season in the sense that you said it very well. There are those boring games, but you know what? You're happy to be there.
Yeah.
You're happy to watch them or hear them on the beach because you know what? That's baseball. That's a summer. This is a very challenging time, and we haven't had baseball, boring baseball, as you might call it, at Yankees or whatever team. But I'll take that boring baseball. And this is the Houston Astros got off light, but let me tell you this. Hey, Houston, you're not off that light anymore. You guys got to play. So as a Yankee fan, you might like that.
Oh, yeah.
Again, that's a whole different ball of wax talking about Houston. I don't want to pick on them right now. But let's talk about what you said. You know, I think that this will be an interesting finale. The team that wins might be a team that never would have won.
Yep.
It may be a team that you would never think would come out of the MLB and do anything, and that will all be that special season where they can always say, hey, we won in 2020. Yeah, but in 2020 but see, it's a spotlight season because it's so different. So there's two ways to look at it. You know, if the Yankees win the World Series, right, we're going to hear Red Sox fans probably say, but the Yankees should win the World Series. I mean, that's just the truth. I mean, the Yankees should win the World Series. That doesn't mean they will. We don't know where they're going to be. So I think it's a good thing in that respect. If you compartmentalize it, yes, it is a good idea to play it. It's an interesting thing. I'm going to be very interested in that sport as that goes down to the wire. But right, like you said, Alex, it's not a typical season. It's not those boring days in baseball where you've had like, wow, you've been playing for 4 or 5 months. When is this? Wow, we still have 2 more months of baseball. That's great. Not like that at all. It's a very sad time, well more than sports. As you know, we've talked about that during this podcast. It's a lot of other stuff going on. It'd be great to escape and watch America's game. I mean, America's game to many people, of course, is football, but originally America's game, baseball. So there you go.
So I'm going to present this to you because you've been doing radio for a while, and radio guy, any guy in entertainment, ratings are a big deal. You guys always want to have good ratings. MLB has been suffering in terms of popularity, in terms of their ratings. That's no secret, and they are now coming in to compete against the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs, on top of UFC, which has gained steam, and NASCAR, which is always massive and is really capitalized on the moment of being one of the only few sports coming on. But if they see good ratings with a 60-game season competing against everyone else as well, is this kind of food for thought for not only the players but the owners to really, because I know a lot of fans have been calling for a shorter season for a long time. I think the number has been like, can we get 140 or 120? Like, let's get some games out of there. If they see a nice bump in fan bases for 60 games and it continues throughout the playoffs, are we possibly going to see a dramatic reduction in games in the next CBA, or at least the players fighting for a dramatic reduction? Like, hey, we can all make money here if we shorten the season and get more people watching. Or is everyone so stuck in their ways with the traditions of baseball that they're going to say, nope, records have to stay the way they are. We got to keep those games, rah, 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 whatever they do.
I think the fight is really for the shortening of the game, not so much the season. People don't necessarily want to sit through a 4-hour game. There may be some games like that, the Dodgers and Giants, the Red Sox and Yankees, where you're going to have those games. I'm for a pitch count. I've been for a clock on the pitcher a long time. The worst game is when the guy just takes his time between pitches and just, throw the ball. I was listening to a game. I forgot who the commentator was, but I do know the commentator was a former athlete. And I was out of town, and it was kind of funny because he goes, "Would he throw the darn ball already?" Now I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but as people are listening, you can. It doesn't sound good on TV, does it? But if we're watching, it's okay, you and me. But it was on TV. He's like, "Would he throw?" He goes, "Isn't it? Isn't he taking time?" And I'm like, "Ooh." As a broadcaster, I'm like, "Oh," but I didn't blame him. So I know, and kind of Alex brings up kind of a question. I mean, where do we need to modify baseball? I mean, baseball is going to be what it is. It's got its problems in the African American community, pretty much because a lot of African Americans don't play the ball. They don't play the sport.
Yeah.
It's not being aired on a lot of television shows that are geared toward African Americans, and I know this because I watch TV shows that are not that they're just for people of color, but they do gear themselves
kind
to
of promoted more towards that demographic.
Oh, sure, and that's okay, and that's what it should be, and that's
Yeah.
the way it is, and I'm okay with that, but they won't talk about baseball unless there's a story. In the summer, they're talking basketball, and they're talking football, a lot of football. Okay, so here's the problem. We already have a problem where a lot of our society doesn't watch baseball, okay? So your point is well taken. Shortening of the season, okay, but we know shortening of the game, at least in my opinion. Now, I'm wondering, what are your thoughts, Alex?
Yep.
We need we need an umpire behind the plate. I feel we do because balls and strikes, not the big deal. Balls and strikes, they can use radar for that. I'm kind of sick of the balls and strikes.
Yep.
I am personally, because a ball is a ball and a strike is a strike. And I don't really want to see an umpire's interpretation of a strike and see somebody else's interpretation of a strike. But when it comes to tagging, catcher tagging the runner at home plate, I want to know if he's out. I want there to be somebody right there to say safe or out. I need that. So I'm not sure what you think is good as far as that goes, because I think speeding up the game is important. If we did have radar, I believe radar would be the way to do it. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say this but me. I'm just saying radar would detect whether the pitch is a strike or a ball, speed up, put a pitch clock on the pitcher. Okay, now we've just sped up the game a whole lot.
Yep.
But we still need the human element, right? So the human element at this point says, all right, we have to have umpires here, here, and here. We do need them. How would that work behind the plate? What are your thoughts about that? Do you think there could be a person there? Would he just be hanging out there just for whatever reason?
So one thing they are doing in certain other leagues, and I know that they do have basically a strike zone already built in for each shot, and they have an earpiece in the umpire's ear that's telling them ball and strike. So they already have something similar to that. But me personally, I was, in the beginning of instant replay and everything, I was all for it. Now, when I've seen how far they've taken it, all of it needs to go. I don't want a radar. I don't want instant replay anymore. I don't even want them in sports anymore. To me, instant replay has ruined sports. The human error has been a part of everything. And I think that we have seen so much more human error by officials because, number one, they know the replay will back them up or it'll overturn them, and there is no penalty for an official being wrong via instant replay. And number two, some of them feel so much more pressure in this instant replay era because they know if they make an egregiously bad call, the wolves are going to be called on them, and it's not going to go away. Social media is going to make sure that it stays, that this guy is going to be known forever as being this guy that cost this fan base this. So for me, I want to get rid of instant replay, period. I don't want to see it. I want it to just become a cool thing that we used to see on the TV broadcast. That's all I want it from now on, because I think instant replay has become awful. You talk about speeding up games. What is it in baseball where an instant replay might happen, so they tell the guy that's called out to stay on the base, and the manager does this to hold up the game, holds his hand up, and the home plate ump actually holds up the game to wait to see if they should call for an instant replay or not. Like, come on. Like, that is ridiculous. Instant replay to me needs to go by the wayside. It was a cool idea. It was a cool technology. It has failed all of sports. Yeah, we get it right, but at what cost? And we don't always get it right either. That's my worst problem. We don't
instant
always get it
replay
right.
in baseball is very minimal, especially if you're not in the playoffs. Even some managers won't call it if it's just the middle of an August, July game. It's meaningless and not in your league. For the most part, that's not a big deal, I don't think.
I just like human error. I like human error in all of sports because we're not going to sit there and now replace athletes because they might not, they might not do the right thing. We're not going to replace a shortstop because he threw to first instead of turning two when he should have. So it's like the human error element. Officials are also human. That's meant to be there. And, if there's bias, then we discover if there's bias, and maybe that can be something that can be fleshed out. But I like human error, and especially in baseball, I feel like human error has been such a big part of it, and it's been so good. And there's something cool about the arrogance of an umpire. where they know they are wrong, but they just look like tough bastards in their stuff. And they're just sitting there like, nope, get out my face. Nope, not changing it. And just the other umpires having his back and kind of like, get out of here. He might have been wrong. We know it, but get out of here. There's something about that I kind of like. Maybe it's me.
Well, they're not going to change. Umpires know this, and you know this, and everybody who plays the game knows they're not going to change their call. What they might do is give the team a break on the next call. Yes. You're right. Of course, what you say is true, Alex, that there were mistakes. The thing is, if you're an athlete, and you made a great point about social media, and we're in, the millennial generation is a generation of instantaneous fact, right? We get things instantaneously. We go to Google, we search it, and boom, it's there. That's why there's a lot of people like the Gen Xers and the older people, myself, the older Gen Xer and baby boomers that aren't very happy with a millennial because maybe you know a lot, but maybe you haven't thought and done the work to know a lot. That's the theory, okay? Yep. So I think we're expecting things rather quickly, but I don't know that it's a bad thing to expect the call to be right. I don't know that that's a bad thing. And you make a point, too, which is a good one about umpires are going to make mistakes. But I want to get back to the original point in baseball, a little different than football.
Yep.
In baseball, that the game is long, and to get the interest back in the game, I believe it needs to shorten a bit. If you're looking at, and I know you're a younger guy, I'm not going to ask exactly, I think you're around 30 or so.
31.
I watched the Mets beat the Boston Red Sox, and I actually watched Mets games a lot younger than that. I was at Shea Stadium and watched Tom Seaver play. And back in those days, it was a whole different generation.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about completely than who's on the planet today.
Did you keep the scorecards? Were you one of those that brought the
I did. I did until I asked my father, do I have to do this? And he goes, no. And I'm like, okay, so I tossed it out. I was really, yes, I did do stories. The funny thing is when I brought them home, they were kind of worthless. I look at everything but the scorecard. I look at the Rheingold beer, a commercial. I wouldn't look at the scorecard because it was like, I don't know. I don't remember what happened here. It wasn't vivid. But the point being that these are different people on the planet. This is not the same group of people. So the people now are not looking at every pitch going, oh, those people. I mean, I could only remember as a kid, it was a big deal, and you being a Mets fan. And I went to maybe more
I'm a
Mets
Yankees
games.
fan. I'm not a Mets fan. I'm a Yankees fan.
I'm sorry. You're a Yankees fan.
The Mets can go somewhere.
I went to Yankees games and Mets games. My whole story about being a little bit of both is, and I don't, because a lot of baseball fans are purists. It's okay to like the Jets and the Giants, but it's not okay to like the Yankees and Mets.
I don't mind the Mets. The Mets are the redheaded stepsister. They're okay.
I'm on the road, and if I'm on the road and I did radio in Pittsburgh, I'm going to see the Mets because the Pirates played them. There was no interlude. Okay?
Yep.
If I'm on the road or I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, I'm going to see the Yankees. So nobody's going to tell me I can't be both. Now, I am a Yankees fan more because I probably would have been a Brooklyn Dodgers fan.
Okay.
Probably growing up in Brooklyn. First time I saw Ebbets Field, it's what it probably looks like today. It's a housing project. I never saw Ebbets Field. I never saw a baseball game at Ebbets Field. The only time I saw a baseball game on that side of the river was in Queens, and that's not the Queens Mets. They are also part of the New York Giants, baseball Giants, and I'm going to tell you something. That's not the same team. They hated each other, right? But it's okay to watch. So I just want to answer those people that say, wait a second, you like the Yankees, but you also like the Mets. Yes, I do, but I like the Yankees much more. And we got to the bottom of that. But anyway, in watching the games at Shea, maybe more than Yankee Stadium was always a treat, though. You're going for the big game. My father would have to say, we're going for the big game. And we'd go to the play. Oh, yeah. Shea Stadium was a treat, too, because you'd be there watching Tom Seaver and, these other guys. I'm sure you know a lot of the Mets players that Jerry Grody, wasn't that a Mets player?
Darryl Strawberry, Joint.
Well, I'm talking a little before that.
Oh, a little before that.
Generation, no, I'm talking about early mid-'70s. Oh, of course, Darryl Strawberry, yeah. But what I'm saying is, going to those games and then seeing that and then getting back to where we were going with the baseball being concise and all that kind of stuff, and that's our generation now. It really wants to get things, moving again, make it happen. And we already have enough people who have turned baseball off. They're not watching baseball. Maybe they haven't turned it off. Maybe they haven't adopted it. That's the kind of thing. And I think it's also true. We're, right now being a Yankees fan isn't all it's cracked up to be, but they're the Yankees.
Yep.
They're the Yankees. They're the history. Everyone knows that. The Yankee hat is the most popular logo. The Yankee, more so than the star in Dallas.
Yep.
I don't want to get you mad, Dallas, but I'm going to tell you, very close.
True. It's true.
Very close. I'm not going to deny that. Okay? Giants fan over here. But the truth is the Yankee logo is the most popular logo in sports, period. And that just tells you people will put on their Yankee hat, and this is true. And I'll ask my buddy, I'll say, what happened with the Yankees game? Yankees game? I haven't seen a baseball game in a year. He has a Yankee hat on.
The fashion statement, yep.
Yeah. No, he just likes the hat. So that's okay. But the point of the matter is, it's the Yankees, but still, it's not the same game as it used to be. So I think speeding up the game, your question was, do we speed up the season? I don't agree with speeding up the season. I think the season belongs the season. I think there is those games where you're like, I can't believe anybody's at this game, especially the bleachers. I'm on the beach, but I'm glad I want to hear the game. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
That's where it comes to baseball. I think baseball's that way. Again, I'm going to stick to saying the game's too long. We don't need to see a game that long. There's no clock. The only game that has no clock is baseball. There needs to be some sort of clock. It needs to be regular. I would think about some of those games that go 14, 16 innings.
And then they have to play the next day.
Yeah, and there's a day game after a night game.
Yeah.
These guys, I know they make money. I understand that. That's a tough sport in its own right, right? Isn't it?
I agree with you on the pitch count. The pitch count, I think, is cool. The clock, I think they need to have a clock because, like you said, there are those guys that just waste time. I like what they were doing with the trips to the mound. You can't take an unlimited trips to the mound anymore.
That's another pain in the neck.
You can't do that anymore. That's gone.
What do they give you? How many is it now?
I think 6? It's 7 a game.
7 a game, okay.
And you can't do that. And if you want to walk a player, you could just give the signal like I'm walking them, no pitch.
Yeah, right. That's good.
Those things have been good. I don't know how much more you can do. I don't know how much more telling the ump what call is right or wrong will speed it up because umps make the call instantaneously anyway, right or wrong call. So I don't know what else there is. I definitely think a pitch clock would help, but we shall see. Now, you brought up the Houston Astros. And I think you brought up something interesting saying that we haven't forgot about you. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people have forgot about the Astros. And it will come back up when the season comes. But I don't know if the animosity is still there because, unfortunately, the way to put it, they cheated, yes. But we got hit with some real life. COVID-19 is real life. The pandemic is real life. Sports are still sports. It is a child's game. So they cheated at a child's game to win the ultimate prize, cheated a lot of people out. But at the same time, everyone's now worried about their family. Everyone's now worried about their extended family and their friends. Right. So how much animosity do you think we're going to see towards the Astros? Because there were a lot of players basically saying, we're going to hit you. We will take the fine. We'll take the suspension. We're going to peg you guys. Where do you see them going now with the shortened season? Do you think it's still going to happen? Are they going to get some beanballs?
Obviously, they're going to baseball to avoid thinking about this tragedy that we call COVID-19. Mm-hmm. And that's why you're going in the first place. So once you're engrossed in a movie or a sporting event, you're part of the event. And the Houston Astros are the bad guys.
Yep.
You're going to be in it knowing that, and they are the bad guys. Yep. Has nobody ever cheated before in baseball? Come on. We all know that that's happened before. Yep. The Houston Astros are not your team or mine. Mm-hmm. And maybe we're glad in many ways that's the way it is because they're an embarrassment to Houston. And, I know that if you're a Houstonian or you feel that way. Mm-hmm. But no, they're the bad. But if you look at it a little bit like professional wrestling, if you kind of do that for a second, you're going to say, hey, let them be the bad boys. Let us be. And I'm sure that they're probably owning that too. Oh, yeah. Altuve's probably doing that himself with all the money he's making. Yeah, I've heard many people say this, and I've heard it so many times, is that, how can you root for these guys anyway? They make so much money. And again, I think it's about being engrossed in the game. You don't really think about the salaries. You don't want to think about that because at the end of the day, you're looking for the entertainment fest. That's why being a Yankee fan and us watching these great players for so many years, it's so amazing to watch them make that catch, hit that ball. Derek Jeter just being right place, right time, knowing when he gets that ball, he's going to make it out. You just know this. It's just a great thing to have. They're entertainers. They're very much entertainers.
And Joe, not to interject, but I'd much rather pay a mediocre athlete that still entertains me than a mediocre actor or actress that I really won't watch what they do. Like, I think the money goes more well spent towards the athletes than it does towards Hollywood. That's just, and I love movies. I love TV. I'm a fan of it, but the throwaway athlete, I think, gives you more entertainment in their short spurt than the throwaway actor or actress that hangs around for 40 years and does maybe 3 things you're going to watch, but still makes a whole lot of money off of a bunch of flops.
I think you made a point that there's a connection, and that's true. Yep. There's a connection between the two. A mediocre athlete is a little different in the sense that they are part of a bigger ensemble, and they can really destroy a good team.
Yep.
You know, you'll hear about these ball players, anybody in particular going to these teams, and wow, you know, how come they're not making the team better? I think with the Jets right now, what's his name? He's negotiating. He wants to go to Dallas.
Oh, Jamal Adams. I went on a rant. I was a huge fan of Jamal Adams. I played safety my whole life in football. When I played for 10 years, I enjoyed watching Jamal Adams. Right. Number 33 is not on the team for me right now. He's done. You don't tell another fan base you're trying to leave when you still have 2 years on your contract for this one and you're being a baby. To me, if he's out on the field, there's 10 guys playing defense right now. I'm all out on Jamal Adams. I don't care.
Well, here's the thing. Jamal Adams is supposed to be somebody that changes the team. I've heard one of the commentators say, it's actually a sports talk show host like yourself, say, well, is he making the Jets any better? And if you look at the record, probably not. But you can't expect.
Watch him, he does. If you watch him, he does everything on that defense. He really is that type of generational
player.
Player.
And that's my point about football. You're comparing apples and oranges. It really doesn't work that way. Yep. You need a team. You need a whole team. You've got to build a team. And that's what happens with basketball too, with the New York Knicks. Could LeBron James have come here instead of the decision he made to go to Miami? He was never coming here. He was never coming here. And, of course, this would be a great place to come. The Knicks, right? I'm saying hypothetically, it would be a great place to come. Not really. But because of the team, the owner, it's not coming here, okay? Yep. He himself, even with one other player, is not going to win. It's just not going to work that way. And that's the best team. Probably basketball would be the team that you'd feel would have the best shot of winning with the least few great players. Yep. So when you're talking about a football team, you know, you really need a bunch of players to get together and make themselves work. I think with a bad actor or a bad actress, if you're in a movie or whatever, there's a lot of it's pretty much the same thing though. Yeah. You know, you can kind of get by, or maybe if there's better actors around you, but you can in sports. I don't feel that. And if you are doing it in sports, somebody else is going to replace you. Definitely.
So just last to wrap it up on the bow, do you hate Houston as much as I do? The Astros.
I mean, I think if I was a player, I would be frustrated. I work really hard. Yeah, of course, you know, you could say the Yankees weren't hitting all that well in the series. I'd be frustrated. I also don't like players who gloat too much, and I understand enthusiasm and all that, and that's good, and you're gonna have it, especially when you're a winning team. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of that kind of a team. Obviously, you're caught cheating. You were cheating, and yeah, you might say, well, other people cheat too. Well, it's the same thing about shoplifting. You know, other people shoplift. They get caught. It's that way. You shouldn't shoplift. You shouldn't cheat. And that's just the way it is. It's kind of a cut and dry situation. Hate is a strong word. It's fun to see them as the bad guys right now. Let's see what happens with that. And we'll go forward.
Wonderful. All right. So that's going to close out this episode of Sports Opinions Podcast. Sonny Joe, thank you so much for coming on.
It's been a pleasure, Alex. I'm glad to be here. And once again, please, if I may say so, I want to say hi to the Hudson Valley. It's been a pleasure. And hopefully you can continue to join me on Oldies 98.9 during the middle of the day, 10 to 3. I am Sonny Joe. And guess you can catch me by going to Facebook. I'm not really a Twitter guy right now. I'm laying low on tweets. But you can go to it's Yo Sonny Joe. So it's Facebook at YoSonnyJoe.com.
And definitely, if you are in the area, go check out that oldie station because I catch myself listening to it sometimes, especially when Sonny Joe's on. And there are certain songs that he throws on, and especially if you're my generation, you're in your 30s, maybe your 40s, you turn on some songs and you're like, wait, I didn't know this song was by this group. Like, you know, I think we all grew up and we know certain few groups like Temptation, some of the bigger oldies groups. But then you sit there and you hear and you're like, I thought that was by this group. That's by that. Or we hear songs that we had remade in our generation and we're like, that was oh, okay, that makes sense. We can't make any real music anymore, so we have to sing somebody else's. But but anyway,
Well,
I'm Alex Cuesta.
that's what my feature is about, by the
Yep.
way. That's why I do sample the samples in the
Mhm.
45 cellar. I think that I'm not as old as the music. I'm not trying to act young.
Mhm.
Some of the music's older than me. Some of the music I grew up with because of older brothers
Okay.
and cousins who listened to it, and I loved it from back in those days. And there are some of the songs that I do remember as a kid. But what I really loved is the fact that we can bring that music to younger people. And that's what I think my show is about. I mean, everybody has their own thing on the radio station and they do great jobs at what they do. And what I do is talk to the viewer that might be a little younger and viewer on your show, but of course, listener on mine, and let them know that there is a place in this music in history. And it's a very important place because if it wasn't for the Supremes, there wouldn't be a lot of groups today. There just wouldn't be. You can't. And what's really interesting is, and I'll leave you kind of talking about this, you know, a lot of times we do the same thing with sports, but we do this, the Rolling Stones versus the Beatles.
Mhm.
Well, you don't have to hate one to like the other. You just don't.
Yep.
I'm not a big Beatles fan, but I respect the Beatles and I know how important they were and what they did to the country, what they did and how they changed music forever is undeniable. But I don't have to tell you, well, I like the Rolling Stones, which I do, and dislike the Beatles. So I think that's something we always have problems with that or fun with it, not really problems, but it's part of our repertoire, if you will, that, you know, it's one group versus the other. And it isn't necessarily like that. So what we like to do is have you listen to us and hear some of the music you're hearing on TV right now and say, oh, yeah, you know, that's part of a Target commercial. And it is. You're going to hear some of the stuff. Sunshine, Lollipops, and Rainbows by Leslie Gore. That was just a Target commercial. And young people are going to think that was a commercial made just for Target. And what's so great about it is they can have this great song, perfect song that nobody heard or not many people have heard under the age of 45 and just play it here without starting a song, composing a song, and they're doing it. And I think that's a good thing. I like that these businesses are actually using that. For the local area, Geico just used a song by Canned Heat called Up the Country. That was a Woodstock group, a real group that played at Woodstock. There were a lot of groups that you think played at Woodstock. They didn't. No, Canned Heat played at Woodstock, and Going Up the Country, the motorcycle commercial, uses that. I will bet you, Alex, most people do not know that. They didn't know it, but it's local to the area. Bethel Woods, of course, right around here. So that's a lot of fun. So you said it best, Alex. Check it out. You'll listen to songs you know, but you'll say, I don't know the name. Who is this? And I'll tell you. I'll help you out with that.
So, yep, Sonny Joe's a wealth of knowledge. You'll get to a lot of fun tidbits like that. That was just a small sample of what you're going to get on that show. So definitely go check it out. I'm Alex Cuesta, host of the Sports Opinions podcast. Find me on Twitter and Instagram at @A_Cuesta30. Find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30. Instagram, Sports Opinions30. Search Sports Opinions Podcast on Facebook or anywhere you can find a podcast, and you will get this show with my great guests like Sonny Joe and a bunch of other ones, plus all the other shows on the Sports Opinions Network, Cuestados, Personal Foul Podcast, The Playbook, and We're Young But Just Us. So I hope everyone enjoyed this show. I hope everyone goes and checks it out. Check out Sonny Joe middays. And everybody, have a good one all.
Thanks, Alex.